Are you longing for a deeper connection? Searching everywhere for answers, but still coming up short? The answers you seek don't require you to move your feet. Close your eyes, open your ears, and take a journey into the labyrinth of your soul. Because a voice from within your heart, the innermost room of your soul, has been trying to speak to you all of your life. If you don't want to make that journey alone, tune in to Heart and Soul Radio, and let's make that journey together. Heart and Soul Radio on www.jessherriott.com. You are listening to Heart and Soul Radio with your host, Jessita Herriott.
Now. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to repeat what I just said because the system just started recording. So I don't want to sound crazy, but thanks again for deciding to join me for this podcast, Dianne. For those that haven't had a chance to, find out about your work, those that listen to my work, could you tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a bigger-bodied, brown-skinned, black-skinned yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for about 15 years. I've been practicing for about 40 years or so. And I've created a website called Yogasteya.com where I encourage people of different sizes, different abilities, and different ethnicities to join yoga, to come on the mat and learn about themselves and to create a mind-body experience. And that's primarily what I do. I think the fact that I'm a bigger-bodied yogini and a yogini with black skin has created a little bit of a stir because what we see in mainstream media is not that. So I've been a little bit outspoken about getting everybody to come to the mat and experience this practice as a way to heal their body and their mind. So.
Awesome. Let's talk a bit about that. Before we get into the part where you said, because that's a pretty deep nugget right there, how yoga can heal your mind, body, and soul. Talk to me about your path to yoga. What got you started in yoga?
Well, when I was a very little kid, when I was about 3, my brother and sister were born, and my mother was wholly overwhelmed. So we lived in a very small town. I'm from Canada. I lived in a very small town at the time. It's a bigger city now, outside of Toronto. My mother didn't drive, and she had 3 kids under the age of 4 at home, and she was completely stressed out and kind of isolated at the time. She didn't work. She didn't drive. And so she ended up getting a book called Stay Young with Yoga, and I still have it. It was written in the 1950s, and it was some way that she could de-stress, being home all day with all these kids all by herself. My parents are immigrants from Barbados, so she wasn't familiar with the culture or her surrounding, so she really needed something to help her deal with stress. So she started doing some of the poses out of the book. And she used to put my brother and sister, they're twins, in this big basket on the floor while they were napping. And her and I would have mommy and Dianne time doing this yoga practice. And so we would just pick poses out of the book, and the 2 of us would do it. And that was my initial introduction to it. And as I got older, I found it really helped me stay focused in school. It helped me with my breath. I have asthma. It helped me learn how to calm myself when I was having an asthma attack, slow my breath down. And then when I got into high school and university, it helped me deal with the stress of being in school, with the stress of being different. And it really became more of a spiritual practice for me, a way I could connect with God and with myself, and kind of almost like a moving meditation. It really helped me deepen my faith. And that's kind of the path I took. And I noticed that there weren't a lot of people around me doing yoga, so I decided that I would ask my pastor at my church if I could rent the hall on during the week and do some yoga classes. And she thought it was an amazing idea. So that's what I did. I rented the hall. I told my girlfriends and my neighbors to come out, and we did yoga, and then it blew up from there.
Wow. Wow. Let's jump into some of the inner workings of yoga, because you said a lot of things, and I know there are a lot of us that can really resonate with that. Take us into some of the inner workings of yoga. First of all, what is yoga, and how does it relate to our inner selves? Like, how do the poses help our inner selves? I guess that's kind of
ways.
a question.
The thing is,
What is
the
yoga?
asana or the poses itself is such a very, very small part of the practice. The practice of yoga is uniting your breath, your body, and your spirit together. It's also an opportunity to really self-study, to learn about yourself, to understand yourself. And the first part of it comes through breathing, meditation, and focus. And those are things that I know in our fast-paced society that we don't spend a lot of time looking at or doing, but it's an opportunity to really sit and get to know yourself. So I found the best part of the yoga practice for me, and I find initially what brings people to the yoga class is the fitness aspect of it, stretching tight hamstrings, stretching, your lower back that's hurting because perhaps you are working at a job where you're sitting a lot or you're standing a lot. Wanting to keep your body limber so that you can enjoy or you can increase the quality of your life as you get older. That's usually what ends up bringing people to class. Also, I get a lot of people that come to class who have, back issues, and their doctors or chiropractors or physiotherapists have sent them to yoga to get some stretching and some relief for some really tight muscles, because as we age, things start to deteriorate. So it's a great way to keep yourself limber, to build strength. And on the path to that, you kind of figure out about yourself. You learn that through the breathing techniques of yoga, I can reduce my stress. I can create more focus for myself. And really, if you're doing it properly, you can actually slow time down, because you can learn to be in the present moment instead of always, going back to the past and maybe lingering in issues that aren't serving you, or looking forward to the future and creating anxiety for yourself because you think you don't have enough time or you don't have enough resources or whatever it is. Yoga really does bring you to the present moment, and it allows you to slow time down, to take a deep breath. It creates strategies, or helps you create strategies for managing stress, for keeping your body limber. And when you're not stressed and when you're focused and when you're relaxed, joy comes much more easily, right? Because when you're in the present moment, that's all that you can take in. So I find that's the biggest part of yoga, for me anyway.
That totally resonates with me. I'm a meditator and a spiritual teacher. I just kind of the last year since I came back from basic training, I just felt this this deepening of my body has been calling me to yoga in a very basic form, and as a beginner, and I'm okay. I think that one of the things that we struggle with in spirituality is we love to be experts at everything, and so you'll see people who consider themselves to be spiritual, they have like a 35 letters after their name, and I'm okay with saying that I am a baby in the yoga movement, so I want to learn all that I can. So I have two questions for you. Number one, how can we make this a part of our everyday life? And number two, well, let's start with the first one. How can we make yoga a part of our everyday life? Because yoga, for some people, is a way of life, and for beginners, it can seem like, how can we make this a part of our everyday life?
That's the biggest thing, is taking your yoga off your mat, which is actually a blog that a friend of mine who's a prominent yoga teacher in the Detroit area, Gail Parker, talks about. And what I've learned about this experience, or bringing it into the everyday, is stopping and being mindful, like practices in being mindful. So for me, how I take my yoga off the mat is I have a business, I have a family, I'm married, I have a lot of stuff going on all the time, and I always or feeling almost, I always start, when I know I start feeling resentful that I don't have enough time for myself, it's when I use my yoga off the mat. So I might not be able to roll out my mat and get a 90-minute practice in, but I am able to set aside 10 minutes in every day and just do a few stretches. And once I set that aside for myself, it becomes about self-care and self-awareness. So if I have to set my alarm clock 10 minutes earlier in the morning, what I do is I actually roll my yoga mat out next to my bed. And if I step on it, like some mornings I try to jump over it because I don't want to do it. But if I step on it, then I have to do at least one basic sun salute, right? And then the other way I bring it off the mat into the everyday is if I'm standing in line at a grocery store, I always pick the longest line. And that way, I can actually stand in meditation while I'm waiting for this line to move forward. And I look for opportunities in my everyday life where I can bring my awareness back to my breath, where I can allow myself to just be in the present moment, not jump ahead to what's going next, which is what your mind will always do, and it's designed to do that, but is learning that that's what's happening, and I can gently coax it back. I often think of my meditation practice, or my mind in my meditation practice, is trying to train a puppy, a brand new puppy, to go on the paper as opposed to be all over the house. That my mind is always going to be turning and thinking of the past and thinking in the present and moving to the future. And it is my opportunity to be kind to myself to just allow that to slow down. It will never go away. You cannot shut your mind down no matter what anybody tells you. It's just not designed to do that. But now I'm more aware of my thoughts. And when I'm more aware of my thoughts, I'm more aware of my feelings. And when I'm more aware of my feelings, I know how to make better choices based on what is actually fact as opposed to what feelings I have coming up or what reactions I have based on feelings that are coming up, that I can actually be more objective and more focused in the decisions I make, which leads to me to better decision-making and happier relationships. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a 90-minute asana practice. It can be 30 seconds standing in line at a grocery store, or if I have to go to the doctor or the dentist and you're sitting in the office waiting for your turn, I can sit and I can meditate and I can be peaceful in that moment. And it's time for me in that moment.
Wow, I love that. One of the things that I've noticed in society, we tend to, and I can't even say the word right, maybe because it's so early in the morning, we tend to fragment ourselves, and
Yep.
I think that some of the best spiritual practices integrate all of who we are, our minds, our emotional selves, our spiritual, soulful selves,
Yep.
bodies. So I love what you're saying, and I love what you're saying about breaking down the process to 10 minutes or 10 seconds or 30 seconds. So for me, I'm going to focus on the 10-minute yoga. How can we make that possible? What are some of the essential poses? I know because we're talking, if folks can't really get an idea of it, but if you can describe it, those that listen to the podcast can actually go back and look them up if you give the name in addition to the description. So 10-minute yoga, how would that look?
I call it the gift of 10 minutes. I've actually written a blog on it for doyouyoga.com, and it's just so if you're looking for the poses, I've actually got 5 or 6 poses on that blog, and you can just Google that. The gift of 10 minutes. So setting aside 10 minutes, I tell people, if you have time to watch The Bachelor or whatever reality TV's out there, you have time to do yoga. And even if you do the yoga in your breaks, I don't care. I don't care how you come to the mat or when you come to the mat. I just care that you come to the mat. So setting 10 minutes aside, I think is accessible to everyone. Some of the basic poses I would recommend is you can do a full-on practice in a sun salute or your basic sun salutation. So some of the poses I find that are great for building strength, for opening your hips, for relaxing your shoulders, for bringing awareness into your breath, are any of the warrior series. So warrior 1 is a wide stance, warrior 2 is a wide stance where you're bending into the square of your knee, your toes, your back foot is turned out to the long edge of your mat, and your shoulders are releasing down your back with your fingertips extended out in each direction. And that's a powerful pose that a beginner can do, that an intermediate practitioner can do, that an advanced practitioner can do, and still get a lot of benefit out of that pose. I find it's very, it's strength building, it's confidence building, and it's centering. Easy things like that are great. A forward fold, so feet hip bone distance apart, knees soft, hinging at the waist as you fold forward, and really pushing your feet into the earth and widening your feet apart energetically is a great hip opener. And a forward folding action is very calming to your central nervous system. So if you tend to be stressed or you have a lot going on, it's a really easy pose to kind of relieve some of the stress going on in your life. And then from there, people can step back into a plank pose, which is it's a strong pose. It's really core building, strength building, again, a lot of focus. There's also downward facing dog, which is an inverted pose, almost like if you think about your body coming into an upside down V, it's great for lengthening the spine. So for those of us who have low back issues, it's very good for stretching out hamstrings, stretching out your glute, the muscles in your bottom, for lengthening your spine. So because it goes upside down, it allows gravity to pull down on your spine as opposed to pushing down on your spine. So there's a lengthening that goes on, and there's a decompressing of what I like to call all the heaviness of the world pushing down on you. When you flipped your script or you flipped your paradigm, it allows for a release to happen, not only within the body, but within your spirit and your mind. And it's nice to have a different look. Like it changes your perspective a little bit on everything. Another pose that's in that series of sun salutes is Cobra. So you're laying flat on your belly, your legs are hugging together, you're squeezing your thighs toward each other. Hands are by your sides, just alongside your heart, and you're gently pulling your body forward and through while keeping your legs strong and your belly pulled in. And it's a great chest or heart opener. It helps you to be more receptive to positivity. It's great for strengthening your low back. So those of us who have back issues, you don't want to come up too high in Cobra. But it's a nice, soft opening of the heart. And then from there, you can always go back to your down dog. So those kinds of poses you can put together in a little tiny sequence. And I actually have a couple of them that are free on YouTube where you put little sequences together that you can do in 10 minutes, and that would be enough. You could even do it in 5 minutes. And let's be honest, we all can find 5 minutes in our day if something is really important to us. You can always manage to set aside a little bit of time. And then on the flip side, you can always pick something like a little more restorative when you're going to bed at night, like your legs up the wall. You can take your legs up the wall, or you can sit in meditation, or you can lie on your back and do a few reclining twists, or just come to seated and focus on your breath. These are all things that can be done within a 5 or 10 minute period. Sure.
Are some of those poses I don't want to say available, but are they? Have you seen folks that are older have complications with certain poses, or what would you recommend as far as poses are concerned, or postures for those that are our elders, so to speak, that may attend your classes or yoga classes that want to get into it, but they aren't as flexible, or they have back problems and things like that? What are some of the poses that they could incorporate into their lives so they could still practice and get that same workout, so to speak, of mind, body, and soul?
Absolutely. A lot of the poses that I spoke about are things that that are accessible to most of us. Older populations with sore backs, I would watch with things like forward folds. You may need to take your legs out a little bit wider. You may need to bend your knees a little bit more, or have what we call props, which are either, blocks or books or a box underneath you so that you can just rest your hands on top if you're having a hard time folding forward. I teach a group of seniors yoga, and all of the poses that I recommend there, they're able to get into some form or another. If you have a lot of physical issues, it's my recommendation that you at least attend maybe one beginning yoga class, or, I know a lot of community centers offer yoga classes for seniors and for beginners. Even if you can just get into one or two of those classes, that way there's a qualified instructor to take a look at you and give you ideas of modifications, so that when you take that practice back to your home or your life, you know more clearly what is available to you. But any of the standing poses like Warrior Two are super accessible to older populations, to populations with injuries. Those kinds of poses are generally pretty safe and pretty easy. The cobra pose, which is a very gentle back bend, I would maybe recommend instead of coming up far, just a little lift. And there's also lots of restorative types of poses that older populations find are really comfortable, like things like legs up the wall is a really popular one. If people aren't available to sit cross-legged, they certainly can take a lot of these poses to the chair. So chair yoga is great. Any sitting, like a pose like sitting in a chair, crossing your right ankle over top of your left knee, that's like a seated pigeon. That's really accessible, I find, to seniors. Even warrior pose, having the chair, sitting on the chair and doing the shape of the warrior pose is another way to be accessible. And I know there's lots of resources out there on the internet. I find YouTube is a great resource for, looking at poses, and you could just type into the search engine YouTube yoga for seniors, and you'll see lots of modifications on those poses, because we really do want to get everybody, especially older adults, to the mat.
Your website lists a book about yoga and body image. I know we don't have much time, but can you talk briefly about that? I do want to say I love your work, by the way. I love seeing curvy women and people of color, that do yoga. I mean, of course it's out there, but I love seeing it because, when people commercialize things, corporations, they tend to remove the color away from, I don't want to say the product, as if yoga is a product, but when they do make it a product, they pull the color out of it, which irritates me as being a person of color. So I love seeing people of color, doing yoga, and people of all shapes and sizes. My wife is a curvy woman, so I love this. I can show her this, So, and this is encouraging, because when you are of a certain quality, you want to see people like you, because it makes it easier, because people like to have things that they see. So, real quick, can you speak? I know I said a lot, but
I loved everything you said, and you were dead on. And that's part of what our book is. It's called, the book is called Yoga and Body Image. It just came out 3 days ago. You can get it on Amazon, and it's 25 authors, 25 contributors to the book, talking about their struggles with this homogeneous, I call it, culture of yoga that is presented in mainstream media. Just so everybody knows, that's not what's actually out there. You might have to seek it out a little bit more, but there are a lot of older adults, there are a lot of bigger people doing yoga, there are a lot of people of color doing yoga. But like you said, mainstream media kind of caters to the dominant culture, and where people of color are not considered the dominant culture, so we do get excluded from the conversation, which is why I started this whole conversation in the first place. I just got tired of being excluded or marginalized in this culture of yoga. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's really important that we see bigger bodies, bodies of color, older bodies, even men, for crying out loud, because we don't see a whole lot of that either, on the mat, so that we normalize what we see and it reflects what is actually going on. There is a large population. There are a lot of teachers of color out there doing great things. There are a lot of teachers with bigger bodies out there doing great things. It's just you have to kind of know where to look for it. And now, and I would say in the past 2 years, it's become a bigger conversation. For example, Yoga Journal just put out a body image issue, and this is the biggest yoga publication there is right now, put out a body image issue, and I was invited to be in it. We would have never seen that 2 years ago. So the conversation has started, and it's up to us, people of color, to continue to allow ourselves to be photographed and to speak up and to call publications not necessarily out, but call them up to the table, that you can't make everything homogeneous. Things have to be representative of who's actually participating, and that's how we get everybody to participate, because you want to be able to see yourself on a mat. And I liken it to walking in front of a big store that's got a big display in the window, and everybody in the display is a size 2. I'm not going to go into that store because I know that there's nothing in that store that's going to fit me. But if the display represents a multicultural, multi-diversity platform, then I'm going to say, well, there's something in there for me. And that's the way the world should be. We're all in this together, and there's no one size or color or ethnicity that should be representing it for all of us. We all should be invited to the table, and that's what we need to do.
Right, I totally agree. Diane, I am all out of time, but I still have a ton of questions, so we have to do this again. How can we get a hold of your book one more time, and also your and videos for
Oh,
you?
wonderful. You can find the book on Amazon.com. It's called Yoga and Body Image, a new anthology, and this week it's the #1 selling yoga book, so that's wonderful. There's another book out there called Yes,
Awesome.
Yoga Has Curves, and it features women of color and actually everybody on there with bigger bodies doing yoga. And if you're interested in yoga for larger bodies and all abilities, you can check out my website at yogasteya.com, or you can find me on YouTube. I'm always offering tutorials on how to adjust the pose for your body.
Can you spell that, Yogasteya?
Absolutely. Yogasteya.com. So it's Yogasteya.com.
And for some of those non-tech savvy folks, if we just Google Dianne, Dianne Bondy,
Yes.
and pull it right up.
In the Google search engine. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all that social media stuff. I love that stuff. So yeah, you could Google me and all my stuff will come up.
Beautiful. Well, Dianne, thank you so much for joining me for this particular podcast. And for those that haven't heard the entire podcast, you can find the podcast on my website at www.jessherriott.com, Heart and Soul Radio, or you can just Google Heart and Soul Radio with Jess Herriott. You'll find it on SoundCloud. You'll find it on YouTube, iTunes, and all those good social media channels. Be blessed, be prosperous, and also do